I wanted to take a minute to explain the impact of breathwork on stress management. So, how can breathwork help us with managing our stress? And if you think about stress, we actually have two types of stressors. There are external stressors, like, for example, the amount of workload that we have. It might also be a certain relationship that is conflicting or difficult that gives us stress. There might be things like extreme heat or extreme cold. There might be things that are happening in our life, like when we cross the street and suddenly a car is coming, there's an immediate stress response. So those are all external stressors. Now, what is very special about us human beings, we also have our only created internal stressors. So just by thinking, we can actually create stress. So if I did something yesterday and I'm thinking about it now and ruminating over it and thinking I didn't do well, it can create stress in this moment just by thinking. Or I can think about the presentation that I need to give tomorrow and I'm afraid I won't do well and I will be creating stress and worry in this moment just by thinking. So those are the internal stressors. Now, if you think of linking that to what will come come to our breath, is firstly our nervous system. So our nervous system is responsible to control and to coordinate the body's activities by transmitting signals between different parts of the body and the brain. But so our nervous system is also responsible when we experience stress to do that in our body that will help us to alleviate that stress. And I love the concept that I got on my training course of three states of the nervous system. The first one being a green state, the second one being an orange state, and the third one being a red state. So when we're in the green state, we are in a calm, relaxed state, which means everything is going well. I feel happy, I feel content, I'm quite compassionate, I'm quite open, I'm mentally flexible. Those things come quite easily to me because I feel good in my body. I don't feel stress. My nervous system is not under pressure. When the stressor comes in our life and we move to typically an orange state, then that means we want to get energy to mobilize something because we have something that is coming at us that we perceive as a threat, as a stressor. So it's a state that wants us to mobilize. And I think we know it, or most of us know it, as the fight or flight response. So that nervous system will activate hormones in our body like cortisol and adrenaline, which allows us to, if we need to fight or flight, that we will have the energy to do that. That also means that systems like our digestive system, they will slow down. They will take less energy. So it's really the nervous system kicking into gear to help us in that specific situation or that specific stressor. And if you have the red state, it is actually the state where it's immobilized. And you can think of it as when something becomes really overwhelming, we might freeze. So the freeze response. We don't know how to handle that situation. We cannot really cope with it. We feel completely overwhelmed. We stop speaking, we stop moving, we stop acting. So that's the freeze response. Now, what is important to know is that a healthy nervous system is a nervous system that can quite easily move between those states. So a healthy system in general doesn't mean that we always have to be in this green state. It just means that we can quite easily shift from one state to another state. This state, for example, the orange state, is very relevant, it's very important. It can help us literally survive in dangerous situations, but also in our day-to-day work life, a little bit of stress, a healthy amount of stress that is short-lived can really help us to perform better as well. But then once we've gone through the stressor, it is important that we are able to move back to a green state. Now, talking about work life, when you are very often in this orange state, it might gently move you into a red state. So when the orange state is lasting for too long or you're too often in it, your nervous system will be taxed too much and you will gently, unfortunately, move into the red state where we get apathy, maybe we get depression, we burn out. So that's obviously also definitely something to avoid. Now, the nervous system, so it arranges everything in our body, and most of those things, they happen out of our control. So our digestive system, our heart beating and pumping blood. If we get too warm, we start sweating. Uh, all those kind of things, they happen without us actually needing to do anything about it. It's just wonderful system and mechanics of our body. It's taken care of without us needing to do anything. Now the breath, now we come to the breath, is also part of our nervous system. And it's the only part of the nervous system that we can actually consciously influence. So if I become aware, for example, when I'm moving into an orange state, and I want to manage that state a little bit better and more easily move back into that green state, then I can use my breath to do that. So typically when I go to orange or when I go to red, then my breath becomes more shallow. I start breathing faster. I might maybe hold my breath, so not breathing for a certain moment. So if I then take a couple of deep breaths, I give my nervous system the signal that everything is actually fine, everything is safe, so I can make that movement back to the green state more easily again. So that's where the breath comes in, and that's of course what, if you step into a breathwork session, what we will be working with. And then I would like to just tell one more thing about why actually the breath can be so important. Some of us, or Western medicine for a long time, thought the mind and the body, they are separate. And most of us in the Western world work with our mind to influence our body. So we work with the mind to influence our body, which also means to influence how we feel. So we work, as we call it, top down. And it's a very powerful thing. I think everybody that is in the personal development space or works on themselves know that, okay, if I can work with my mind, I can actually influence what I experience in life, what I feel in life. If I can look at a certain stressor, let's say the amount of work that is coming at me, I might look at as really a challenge and a problem. If I manage to shift the way I think about that, then I will also shift how I feel about it. So it's a great modality. It's really powerful. It's something that I work with a lot. And I think 10 years ago when I started my personal transformation, that was the most important insight for me, that, whoa, I can actually think differently about things, and then it will change how I feel. So it's a wonderful modality. The only, let's say, challenge with it is that sometimes when we are in a really, for example, stressed state and we feel completely overwhelmed, you cannot outthink your overwhelm. You're just not, you don't have that capacity in that moment to do that. Your body has taken over. Literally, the rational part of your brain, the blood that goes there, is shifted towards the fight or flight part, the fear part or the emotion parts of your brain. So it's simply not possible to outthink certain situations. And that's where, if you think about breath work, that it becomes really, really interesting, because we can actually work with the body. The breath is the bridge between our body and our mind. And so through the breath, we can influence our body. And then when we can influence our body, for example, in that state of overwhelm, I become aware that I'm overwhelmed. I cannot outthink my way out of that overwhelm, but I take a couple of deep breaths. My body will slightly shift, which then maybe gives me access again to more rational thinking. But so through the breath, we work with the body and we shift our mind. I think also if you've ever been in a depression or a burnout, you cannot just simply think positively in those states. It's not possible. And I really like this as a way to remember that story follows state. So the way I think, my stories, they follow how I feel. And I think if you just reflect on that for a moment, we all know that in those days that you slept well and you feel good and you just joyful and you're maybe going on a holiday, and the stories we tell ourselves, the stories or the thoughts we have about the world in general or other people, they're generally much more positive because we feel good. And so story follows state. I think it's a really powerful thing to remember. So if you do a breathwork session, last thing I want to say, What's interesting, if you go into like the conscious connected breathwork session that I'm doing, it's between 30 and 60 minutes of breathing. And this I also learned in my course. You can think of it as when you have a bucket, and you can maybe, in the context of stress, can think about it as your stress capacity throughout the day or throughout weeks or months. It might be filling up. So it might become quite full, and maybe at a certain moment too much, and we feel overwhelmed and we cannot really handle what we need to handle in a day. When you go into a breathwork session, what we will do is we will empty the bucket. So we're gonna make it less full. Is 30 minutes, 60 minutes where you will be activating your nervous system, but also deactivating your nervous system, oftentimes finding a deep sense of calm and having released some elements that were still in you, stresses, tensions. So the bucket gets more empty, which means that your stress capacity will also increase because you have more buffer again to deal with all the stressors that come into your life. So that's what one part of the power of these kind of sessions is. There's many more things that happen there that in the long term can have really a big impact. But what is important also to know is that when you step into breathwork and you want to experience breathwork and you want to have real impact in your life with breathwork, then it is going to be important that the awareness that we build through those sessions by being more present with our breath and our body is to start using that awareness on a day-to-day basis so we can start influencing the width of the bucket. So if on a day-to-day basis in a stressful moment I become aware of it and I start applying what I've learned in a breathwork session, then I can actually in that moment influence my stress capacity because I don't let it overtake me. I can quite easily shift into this green state again because I'm aware of it. And so I manage my stress capacity in a different, let's say, more beneficial way for myself. And so you can look at it as your daily practice. If you manage to, on a daily basis, apply what you learn in these longer breathwork sessions, you will be able to widen your stress capacity, to widen your bucket, which means you can take on much more. In other terms, that also means that your resilience goes up. I hope this was useful and gives you an idea of how stress and breathwork, how you can use the breath or breathwork to manage your stress, how it's linked to your nervous system, how the breath is the only thing of your nervous system that you can actually consciously influence. So you can move from awareness of a certain breath to then change your breath, which will influence your nervous system. We've seen that the mind and the body are connected, and that for most of us, probably we mainly work with the mind to try to influence how we feel. And breathwork is all about working with the body to change how we feel, and then that automatically will also change how we think. And so a breathwork session is a very powerful way to empty your stress bucket. And if you move the insights and the knowledge of that breathwork sessions into daily practices, you start seeing shifts in your day-to-day life, and that's where actually you're going to widen your stress capacity. Hope it was useful. Thank you for watching. Hopefully see you in one of the sessions soon.